what the hell was that? Buddy, welcome to the Red Pill Nation. Well, I mean, it's not really a Red Pill Nation hangout. It's more of just me and Vinny being ourselves, because Vinny has been exposed to the massively professional program that is the Red Pill Nation, and somehow he still has his sanity, which is amazing. But yeah, it is the Red Pill Nation hangout number. Hold on a second here. Mr. Super Organized here. It is Red Pill Nation Hangout number 323, interview with Vinny Eastwood. This is going to be mostly, although it is live streaming on Vinny's show, this is going to be mostly about Vinny Eastwood. I will probably be on Vinny's show at some point in the future, where we will discuss the manosphere, recovery, and some other topics that I'm somewhat more familiar with. But tonight, well, my introduction to Vinny Eastwood, I don't think I was ever. I did finally formally introduce myself, but I mean, I would see your feed on Jaffe Ryder's Skype for months and months and months and months and months. I occasionally jumped into the show, but I was always hearing about. Well, let me just put it to you this way. Having heard about what's going on in New Zealand, it actually kind of makes me a little bit relieved in a way that I live in North America, where if they had tried pulling the stuff that they're pulling in New Zealand here, the person that would have tried it probably would have been shot full of lead before he or she even got out of the car. So yeah, Vinny has a very long track record in the country of New Zealand. I am not super familiar with New Zealand and the politics and everything that goes on down there, like what the rich provinces are, which the poor provinces are. Well, hopefully Vinny can give me a bit of an education on that. But mostly tonight we're going to be talking about Vinny Eastwood's situation, although my interviews tend to be more of a conversation than more of an interview. So, without any further ado, Vinny Eastwood, I will yield my time to you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me, bro. What would you like to know?
Well, let's just start out with what's happened recently, and then we can, if we need to circle around to an earlier period, we will. But that's the thing I heard about what happened to you with both both Jaffe and V, right? I heard about what was going on with you, and it was like, okay, I mean, I don't do very many interviews, but I think your situation kind of warrants some publicity. It does warrant some publicity. So just go through what has recently happened, and specifically what happened the day of the trial.
Okay, we'll do that. First thing I need to do really is just to thank everybody, for listening, and I want to thank my mod, DK Spiracy, for helping to share out these streams, and all my wonderful listeners, and all yours too, because ultimately, if there weren't any of us working together or working with each other, we wouldn't have any kind of truth movement, and it is arguable that we don't really have one anyway, because it's not really moving anywhere, according to some. So what happened very recently was I went to court for the 9th time to be defended by my lawyer and Billy TK, my co-accused, also been arrested at the same time. And the lawyers have argued with the Crown, and what it amounts to is that we were arrested on August 18th, 2021. That means in about 10 days, it'll be the 2-year anniversary of our arrest, and we're still going through court. Now, I face 3 months in prison, and Billy TK faces 4 months in prison. This is the judgment rendered by Judge Winter, Peter Winter, who incidentally just a side note, used to be a defense attorney who successfully argued for home detention for a man who had over 6,000 highly explicit child porn images. So that guy deserves home detention, and we deserve prison. Now, what was our crime? Under the law in New Zealand, the Response Act, that was to the pandemic and whatnot, passed at 4 o'clock in the morning without any opposition. The law that we broke is we stood within 2 meters of another human being. Okay, that's
yeah. Wow, that's mind-boggling.
The mind reels, and it's indicative of what New Zealand has become over a period of time. Now, those who don't know me or haven't followed my work for the past, I don't know, almost 20 years now. I'm still, young by comparison to a lot of the people that are in this movement. And over time, New Zealand has had successive governments who've passed successive legislation and then passed it on to the next government, right? So what we're dealing with ostensibly here is a two-party state that has come under what Penny Bright used to call state capture. And there's a very particular kind of corruption whereby the corrupt individuals get their claws in to the state at the policy level, which means that the government will pass whatever legislation their masters tell them to pass, whether that be getting rid of human rights, like the right to stand within 2 meters of somebody, or the right to free speech, the right to peaceful assembly, and additionally selling off strategic and state assets in some cases without even valuing them. So, yeah, New Zealand is a very, very corrupt place, and at the moment there's a very big sort of question mark / target over myself and Billy TK. And this is another election year, right? And our verdict is due after this round in court on October the 10th, which is 4 days before this upcoming election. So it's going to be difficult for us to amass really enough really attention and clout towards this case, because it makes New Zealand look bad. It makes our judiciary look bad. And I think that to a large degree, we're merely being the scapegoats here, because there were a lot of other people who came to the protest, over 100 maybe, and they weren't arrested and they weren't charged. And why is it just me and Billy? Because it wasn't just our protest that happened on that day, on August 18th, 2021, during a snap lockdown for one case of the Delta variant. There were, I think, 3 to 4 other protests that I had been made aware of that were going on in other parts of the country, where indeed some people did get arrested, but they didn't get charged, or they let go, or something of that nature. Now, one person did get charged, and you know what his punishment was for standing within 2 meters of another human being? It was, upon appeal, a $100 fine.
Wow.
Okay, so
that sounds like process is punishment to me.
That's right. So at the moment, me personally, I'm not in the best state. Psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, I'm in a bad way. I think probably the worst I've ever been in my entire life, by a significant margin, because it wasn't just this thing that happened to me. It was a simultaneous life crises. I split up with my ex-wife, and now I can't see my daughter very often, and when I call her, she doesn't want to talk to me. And she's only
wow. That sounds like parental alienation to me. I won't go. Let's not get into too much of that right now. Yeah. I could probably get into that when you interview me, though.
All right. And my current partner, Rebecca, is very stressed out by the whole situation with me potentially going to jail. You know, am I going to be there for her and whatnot? So she's dealing with a significant amount of stress herself from this whole situation, as well as our little baby Alfie. Because if I'm really upset, or if I'm getting triggered or something like that, because I'm under a state of prolonged psychological warfare.
Yeah, prolonged PTSD, prolonged duress, prolonged PTSD. I'm trying to remember. It's a form of PTSD, prolonged duress stress disorder.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not saying you're disordered, but that's the term that I've used. I mean, I've gone through periods like that myself.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and you're not in your right head, right? Thinking.
Well, it's hard to think clearly when
Yes.
you're in that particular situation.
Now, I was wondering about this earlier. Is, let's say you've got somebody with complex post-traumatic stress. What does that effectively mean for you dealing with them? Okay, what can you expect from them? And what you can expect from them is a temper and forgetfulness and unclear thoughts and
tunnel vision,
depression, and ignoring things. You know, not even thinking that you needed to. Pay attention.
I when I went through mine, I also tended to not thinking clearly, a form of tunnel vision, not being able to take everything into account, right?
Yeah,
and it's I mean, one of the things I stress, well, I mean, you don't see it on the Red Pill Nation, but I do see it in my other contents, is that part of it has to be awareness, that you have to be aware of your state of mind and understand that when you're under a lot of stress like that, it's going to affect your thinking. What I start doing in fact, I've been doing a lot of it lately, because it's not as stressful as you are, but there's an employment situation that I've been going through, and I've been making more of an effort to take notes as opposed to just relying on my memory. But continue.
Yeah, so basically for somebody who is used to being very chilled out and having fun with people on the radio while we're talking about satanic ritual pedophile abuse, it makes the job itself much more difficult to do, as well as it just makes getting out of bed more difficult. You know, just doing the job and doing dishes and folding washing and just making sure you got meals.
I've been there.
These are ordinary things that everybody does on a daily basis without thinking twice about it. But when you're under prolonged psychological warfare, these become significant challenges sometimes, and you can get very upset when that occurs. Now, this is, of course, it's hard for me, but think about how hard it is for my partner Rebecca and my son Alfie to see me going through this, and what kind of stress it puts on them to see somebody, losing their crap and swearing and yelling and crying and not being able to do even basic tasks, you know. Bro.
I've been there.
So yeah, when it's just you, it's just you. But when you've got a partner and a child to throw into the mix, that adds even more stress. And then you've got an extra partner, ex-partner, and a baby on top of that. And then my band has broken up as well. It broke up over the lockdown periods because we couldn't get together and jam. So what the hell was the point? And then my guitarist moved halfway down the country, so he's now a 5-hour drive away. Haven't been able to get a new band or do anything like that in the meantime. And, you know, when you're a truth teller, friends that you used to have when you are a normal person, but for lack of a better word, slave scum, all your friends are like that. And when you change, they don't change. And so what happens is they go away, and you find yourself very quickly, if you're into the truth and really into the truth, you'll find yourself very quickly without any friends.
I lost I'm not say a multitude, but what I lost specifically around COVID, I lost probably about a dozen friends. Some of whom I had been friends with 30 plus years.
Mm.
Here's the really weird part about that, though, is that I gained. It was the surprises, like the ones who I thought didn't know anything that did know, and became friends after the fact. The way I kind of always tended to view that type of thing is that yes, you're losing friends, but this to simply create space for better and more appropriate people to come into your life.
Mm.
That's the way. That's generally the way that was the way how I viewed it. I mean,
Mm.
your mentality might be different, but that's kind of like, I mean, for instance, when I was into film and television for years and years, and when I started when I took the red pill and became aware, and I saw what specific. I mean, we could probably get into Sound of Freedom and all of that stuff, but I mean, it was before that. Like the amount of even in my local film community, like the amount of wokeness there. Like I run a film group in the city that I live in, or I used to, and I have to make a very specific point of well, I have to make a very specific point of keeping of keeping my truther, my basic truther and manosphere stuff out of the film content, because I've had people from the film community just absolutely just freak on me. And there are people in the film community who are definitely aware of what's going on, but yeah, I mean, fortunately I discovered podcasting, and that's kind of filled the gap, although I would really love to get back into shooting live action, probably just the same way you'd like to get back into being in a band.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have a very successful band, mind you. I mean, we'd only done like, I don't know, half a dozen gigs tops total in the years that we'd been together, but we were creating a lot of music, and I think we've got about 80 songs that are good enough to go on an album that could be hits. So the problem is right now I want to just raise money to be able to go into the Magic Sound Recording Studios with Alex, my producer, and actually get those things done, and of course without a band to play and whatnot, and my band are, well, they're not professional musicians in terms of what you would think of classically as a professional musician, somebody who comes in, has a look at the lyric and the song sheet and things like that, and then does their own thing, and then you've got new ideas and you can do that. These guys, my band, I love them, and we made some great music together, but they're not professional musicians, and that's what we need to get into the studio in order to lock down these tracks properly. We've got great demos, but it's just the producing of them to make what's very good great. So I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to do that, and I really want to, because quite frankly, doing the truth movement thing, while it supports my family and what have you, it's cost me everything. Including my creative outputs and things of that nature. So it's very, very hard when you're going through this kind of simultaneous life crises and continuing to maintain a positive attitude and to keep consistently doing the work that I've been doing all these years, which is having a conversation with people who've been through some really nasty stuff and making them laugh so that they can continue to deal with it and keep going.
Well, yeah, this podcast has been, for me, the Red Pill Nation has been a real godsend for me. It's kept me. I mean, if I wasn't doing the podcast, I would definitely be going a little bit squirrely myself right now. Shooting live just like being in a band, shooting live content can be incredibly expensive, and like the music community, the film community, you have the festival circuit, and of course, you also have to kind of keep my politics to myself, right? and I also have to keep my opinions about the manosphere to myself, because I mean the film community in particular is just like there's you have to deal with a lot of the opposite sex, and a lot of them are feminists and so forth. So I mean, yeah, I like what I do. I would like to get back. At some point, maybe I will get back into it. I mean, I'm certainly going to be making enough money on this new job that I can probably shoot something on my off time. But yeah, it is like you. I definitely can empathize with the fact that another aspect of my life is lacking at the moment, because I have to do something like you that is really personally important to me as a human being, which is to, talk about the stuff and let people know, and trying to get past the expectations that, like, the disappointment of people that you thought you knew who didn't know, and just the just getting the message out, and like literally having to do it is like a process of inches, right? I haven't been doing this as long as you have, but I mean I've lost my YouTube channel, for instance, twice. Mind you, I probably didn't have the same following you had. But
dude, just losing your YouTube channel is like losing your life's work. And I had 3 that got deleted on the same day.
Wow.
And
I had my stuff backed up, but still, right? Yeah.
It'll take you a decade to re-upload it, and you're creating new content the whole time, so you just don't have the time for it. So basically, you just kind of have to put a tourniquet on that wound and just keep on living your life, kind of thing. Yep, there was once all this great knowledge up there, 20,000 hours of interviews with the best and the biggest truth movement individuals from the year of 2008 to 2021. And now it's all gone, and basically nobody will really search for it or find it or anything like that. So whoever was able to see that content when it was still there is now basically the sole recipient of that content. And I hope it helped them, and I hoped it made their lives easier, and I hoped it gave them something to think about and help them to change their lives in a more positive way, because there's none of that left for anybody else now.
Yeah. That's my personal objective as well. I'm hoping people are entertained by the Red Pill Nation, and I'm hoping that my independent content, which is generally shorter than the long form interview stuff, which is not the Red Pill Nation stuff, that it helps people get through what they need to get through. I've noticed for me, I mean, I have to imagine you've gone through moods like that, where it's like you just like you have a shit. I mean, I don't have quite the same number of distractions you do, but there's just some days you just have a crappy day, and it's like you just don't want to do it, but you do it anyway, and it's like, I mean, I generally get a lift out of doing the RPN myself personally. Yeah, so. There's a couple of other things that that you said in the initial part that I want to bring up. What you told me about them passing that law at 4:00 in the morning. The state of Illinois passed a law around law enforcement, which made it much easier. This is about how they always seem to pass these laws in the middle of the night that made it. Kelso talked about this quite a bit. That basically really restricted how police were able to chase criminals, essentially in the state of Illinois, and that was passed at 3:00 in the morning as well. What I am asking is is there I mean, I don't know if you know who Maxime Bernier is.
Afraid not.
No, he was supposed to have been head of the Conservative Party in Canada, and he lost the leadership to a guy named Andrew Scheer, who ended up being who ended up being a Young Global Leaders guy. Actually, 2 elections ago, Jagmeet Singh, Andrew Scheer, and Justin Trudeau were all Young Global Leaders. So yeah, we were screwed either way. And Maxime Bernier broke away from the Conservative Party and started his own party, and he was pretty much the reason why the Conservatives here in Canada didn't win the last election. Like, is there anybody in New Zealand at the moment that is on even slightly on the radar in that regard?
You remember Ron Paul?
Yes, I remember Ron Paul.
All right. Now, a lot of people might not know about Ron Paul and what measures were taken to derail his campaigns. Massive funding was given to his opposition when he just had to run as a congressman for re-election. And when he was running for president, they would bring out the leading polls on mainstream media and only show candidate 2, 3, and 4 because Ron Paul was number 1. They would hold debates where Ron Paul would be present, but he would never be allowed to answer any questions, or maybe even 1 or 2 when the rest of the candidates would get a whole bunch of them, right? So the cognitive sort of dissonance that exists within the general population exists like this. Look, we want to do something about it, but every time we do something about it, they prevent us from doing anything about it. Okay, so in 2020, when I was running in an election with Billy TK, my co-accused, he had a larger social media following than the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern. He had the largest political party in terms of membership and in terms of candidates in New Zealand history. This is all pulled together in a couple of months. Never been done before. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. Huge amounts of funding would put in. Billboards all around the country. They had a sitting member of Parliament, Mr. Jamie Lee Ross, whose own political party that was officially stamped the Advanced New Zealand Party did a coalition with him. So you've got all of those elements going into an election, and then the Facebook account, 3 weeks before election day, the official party Facebook account got deleted, along with restricting the personal accounts of everybody who had access to it. And this happened directly after the mainstream media posted a documentary defaming and demonizing Billy and calling him a false prophet. And then the election night came out, and even though the Advanced New Zealand Public Party had a database of 70,000 donors, which mysteriously went missing, by the way, and a new organisation called Voices for Freedom started up, well, suddenly with contacts and donors all around the country, and the person who started that was number 3 on the party list, Claire Deeks. Didn't see how that happened, right?
That's just a coincidence.
And on top of that, out of those 70,000 donors, there were only 20,000 votes cast for Billy at the time, right? So a whole bunch of things that didn't make sense and a whole bunch of sabotage. And now I've been talking with people who are abreast with the intel community and how they work, and they've got countermeasures in place in New Zealand very, very strongly. So if anybody really becomes a threat, is actually looking like a contender, they can deploy all these countermeasures and derail it. Now, that's the last election. We're now 3 years on from this, and instead of 1 Freedom Party that has come out, we now have like 8, right? And all of which won't work with each other, barely even talk to
divide and conquer,
but won't even talk to each other, and none of them has more than 1% of the vote between them. All right, and they need at least 5% in order to get their members of parliament in there, because we have what's called MMP, mixed member proportional. What that means is all your votes go in, and you get to cast 2 votes. 1 for the person in your district, they're running for Auckland Central or something like that, as you can see behind me on the live stream, and 1 for the party vote. All right, so if you've got a party like Liz Gunn, who from Free New Zealand Media is starting a party called New Zealand Loyal, and the party still isn't official yet, and it's less than 2 months till election day. Okay? And she does not have a larger social media following than the Prime Minister, and none of the countermeasures have been deployed against her yet, apart from the fact that she was arrested and charged by police while she was at an airport filming some people arrive, people who she'd done work with. The police.
That's a trend I'm noticing. That Bernier got arrested in Manitoba. Trump has now been indicted 4 times. Now I'm finding out about New Zealand. I'd be curious to see if this is the use of the law, and like in the case of, let's just use the U.S. as a reference, the use of the Department of Justice as a political tool to stymie your political opposition. That is something that quote unquote banana republics do. That's on paper, that's not supposed to happen in the West.
Yep, but it does, and we've got plenty of evidence for it at the moment. So I'm very cynical because I'm sick and I'm tired and I'm feeling old and I've been doing this too long, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm very sorry for how I sound to these new people who are full of enthusiasm and full of naivete, coming out and trying to do the right thing and fight against this bad system and what have you. God bless them. You know, I'm sorry for my negativity and what have you.
Oh, no problem.
But just bless you. Bless your little heart for doing what I used to do. You know? And what do I do now? What do I do now that's different? I think the fact of the matter is, because I'm so sick and so tired and so stressed and under all these pressures and stuff like that, that I've largely lost my ability to be enthusiastic. You know, I've lost my ability to really believe in things. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. When I've gone through periods like that, I just tended to focus again. That when you're under stress, you develop tunnel vision, right? And you focus in on the stuff that is most relevant to your survival and most relevant to your state of mind. At least that's what I do. I mean, I'm not. That's generally the human state. Because I mean, back in the hunter-gatherer days, like that type of hyper focusedness helped you stay alive, right? It prevented the thing from 8-inch long teeth from turning you into dinner. You know, losing, and I mean, what I've had to do is, I mean, I've had to just focus. I mean, for me, I've had to focus most on just what I'm doing in my contribution. Maybe I'll make it big, maybe I won't. End of the day, you know, I mean, if it really goes badly for me, I mean, I can at least look people in the eye and say, yeah, you know, I was on the right side. I played my part to fight against it. My conscience is clear. That's my personal take on it. And maybe I might get somewhere with this. Maybe I won't. But I mean, my plan is I'm going to keep doing this until I die or find something better to do. And that something better to do is probably still going to involve stuff that I'm doing like right now, like interviewing you. And the whole. I mean, it's kind of it's not exactly what's going on in New Zealand is not exactly the same thing that's happening in Canada. But it does rhyme. You know, Justin Trudeau has done everything he can to try to limit firearms. He's doing everything that he can. Particularly, I don't know if New Zealand has a super wealthy province in it that is where most of the money comes out of. But I mean, I live in that province here in Canada, and Trudeau has done everything that he can here to try to dampen down the economy here, because a wealthy, independent-minded Alberta at this point, and it's starting to get that way again anyway, would be a very difficult thing because again, we have the parliamentary system in Canada, just like you've got in New Zealand, but the provinces here are kind of like the counterbalance to Ottawa. Now, I don't know how it's exactly how that is set up in New Zealand, but given that they're both Commonwealth countries,
We're talking about very similar things because
yeah,
the Auckland region is probably it's called what's known as a primate city. Now, what that means is it's got a population that's more than twice the population of the next biggest city. All right, and in between Auckland, which is in the northern end of the North Island, and Wellington, which is the capital, where the beehive is. That's our parliamentary building. It just incidentally appeared behind me while I was saying it on my green screen. That's freaking amazingly awesome. They are doing exactly the same thing. And so I think somebody asked me today, where do you think you can go? What is the worst, most communist Western country in the world? And I would say it is undoubtedly New Zealand, second only to Canada.
pretty close. Australia's up there too. Although again, I'm not super familiar with what's going on in Australia, but yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, you're on an island. You don't have a superpower directly to the south of you. And yeah, if Trudeau, even for instance, like North America's got a very permissive gun culture, so even if Trudeau were to somehow able to confiscate every single gun in Canada, which he's not going to be able to do, and he tried pulling, say, some of the stuff that they're trying to pull in New Zealand, and he started using the armed forces to enforce it, there would be thousands of guns being run across the border like that, right? Because from the United States, like it would happen really quickly. So it's, you're on an island. It's a lot easier to control the ports of entry when you're on an island as opposed to, say, Canada, where you have a several thousand-mile long border. So yeah, the dynamics are different. But yeah, no, we've got issues in Canada. Trudeau just divorced Trudeau's getting a divorce. There's been some rather interesting photos that have emerged. Trudeau turns out that Trudeau was a closet homosexual.
I'll stop you right there because our current Prime Minister, Chris Hipkins, is also getting a divorce. What a coincidence.
That is bizarre. I might just have to add that into RPN for this Wednesday. If you're up for it, you can bring us up to date on that one. Yeah, no, I did not know that. Wow.
Hey man, like I think if Canadians and New Zealanders, when two conspiracy theorists get together and they don't know the other person is a conspiracy theorist like them, but then they start having a conversation and they start comparing notes and all of a sudden they realize that they're dealing with the same problem, right? I think if Canadians and New Zealanders who are freedom-minded, how little of us there are, or how many of us there are, depending, because the media would never tell us if there were heaps of us, we would see via the comparisons that we are living under the exact same ruler, even though we're on opposite sides of the earth.
Well, that's that. I won't say that appears to where this conversation is going. That is exactly where this conversation is going. I mean, look at what's going. For instance, I mean, when you live in Canada, you can't really. You got the big elephant right next door, right? So it's like we get to hear and see everything that is going on down there. Like we're saturated with American content up here, and yeah, everything that we've been talking about here, like versions of it, are also happening in the United States. We get a little bit of stuff that's going on in Britain. I don't know the exact details, but particularly when Theresa May was prime minister, there was definitely some, like, maybe not so. Well, Boris Johnson got Britain out of the EU, but he ended up being a globalist shill in the end too. The new person that's taken over has been a little bit more of a lighter touch, but I mean, well, France is definitely. I mean, Macron is definitely. Well, actually, I believe he actually is a Soros young leader. I believe, just like Justin Trudeau. Although I don't know 100% for certain, but I mean, yeah, France has been rocked by riots on an almost continuous basis for the last couple of years. So I mean, yeah, like you're seeing the pattern emerge over and over and over again, right? Even it's not just Western democracies. Like you're seeing versions of this happening in Africa. You're seeing stuff like this. I mean, for instance, with the manosphere, like the consistent issue that I've been hearing when I talk to guys in the manosphere globally is the consistent pattern that is emerging, regardless of which group happens to be in power, is that in every single case, it's the men around them are becoming distinctly aware that the state seems to regard them as tools for their disposal and not as actual human beings.
Mm. The military man is just a dumb animal who has to give his life for the movings of foreign policy.
Exactly.
Thank you, Kissinger. You know, these people tell you exactly what they're doing, and you know, it's a shame that people still look up to the military or still want to join it and things like that. The same with the police, the same with politics, the same with law and medicine and religion, all of these major institutions of our time, entertainment industry, because once you know what they're really like, you can't unknow it. And by the time
once the red pill once taken cannot be untaken. Exactly.
Yeah. And so you now know that you're living in the Matrix and you wake up to the real world. And the real world is dark and cold and Spartan in its existence, you know, just very few wonderful things about it. The only wonderful thing you have is knowing that your mind has been freed. That's the only thing you've got when you wake up from the Matrix. The Matrix gave you all of these things. Foods and places to live and women to have sex with and drugs to take and so on and so forth. But when you're left with just the truth, it's, for some people, it's not good enough. And so they go back. They go back into the Matrix, the ciphers.
Or they go black pill, they go cipher, right? Or they just get completely nihilistic. Yeah. I have had to, personally, I've had to, like, especially when, you've probably been there too, where you've just been in that dark mood. And it's just, for me, when I get into that space, I have to recognize that I am in that space and journal, meditate, call somebody, you know, reach out, pardon the term, touch grass, because I know that's kind of more like something that a woke person will tell you, but I mean, it actually sometimes it applies. Just making sure that you've got that support group in place so that you can, like, get it out of your system. Because it's like I don't know if you ever heard the analogy of the two wolves, one dark, one light.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. One is positive, one is very energetic, one is creative, one is vibrant, and the other one is dark and it's negative, and they're constantly this is almost like the yin yang duality. And which one of those wins is the one that I choose to feed? So I have to make a conscious decision when I get into that state of mind, is to not feed the dark one. Now that is a skill, though, that you have to actually be aware of as a person in order to use it. And there's a lot, especially the younger men, or even the younger people who are into this, right? They don't necessarily know. Now there's this kind of, now this is why I wanted to have a conversation. There's a couple of people. Like, I saw something on Instagram by Tony Robbins here just a couple of days ago, and Tony Robbins was mentioning that his business right now, he's been around for decades, but his business right now is just booming. Like, he's making money hand over fist right now. And the consistent pattern that he's noticing is that there's a lot of people out there that are looking for some type of agency in their life. And here's the other issue about that. And ultimately, I think this is where they're going to have to go, because they already tried pulling it with a woman named Teal Swan last year. And I actually covered this on the Red Pill Nation, did an interview with Kelso and General Tate. Disney, through Hulu, did a documentary which ended up being a hit piece on Teal Swan. Now, I don't know if you know who Teal Swan is, but Teal Swan is a member of the New Age community.
Okay.
And she's a member of the New Age community, but she talks about the same sort, like she will talk about the same sort of stuff that we're talking about now from a New Age perspective. And that the New Age community is one that's absolutely infested with wokesters, and she is like you and me, right? Reviled, disliked by large segments of that community, because Teal will have a tendency to call a spade a spade. And she will comment on stuff that goes beyond the New Age community and how it affects things. Same thing, for instance, and I mean, when I go on your show, we'll probably get more into this. Andrew Tate. Now, he's an extremely controversial guy. But this is not something that's so well known about Andrew Tate, is that Andrew Tate is the most recognized name in the manosphere, but he's not the biggest name in the manosphere itself. He was never the biggest name. The biggest name in the manosphere was a guy by the name of Kevin Samuels. But what Andrew Tate does, as opposed to, say, what Fresh and Fit or Hammerhand or Terrence Popp or Rollo Tomasi will do, is that Andrew Tate was willing to volunteer his opinions and say his opinions. Much like Teal Swan, much like you and I, he was willing to venture his opinions on issues, political, cultural, and whatever. And, you know, no big surprise, he's actually facing, and same thing with Jordan Peterson, no big surprise, like anybody who steps out like this right now is facing a large degree of prosecution. And it's only happening specifically to figures like you and Tate and Teal Swan. Like, it's not, like, you don't see the same sort of stuff happening to guys like, say, Andrew Cuomo or whatever, right? Like, I mean, they're using the full mechanisms of the state to make people's, like Jordan Peterson, like make their lives difficult and bog them down in legalities, in stressful events and whatever, simply to distract them from their actual purpose, right? And that's again, right? We're having this conversation and sort of like, yeah, what's happening to you is also happening to various people all over the globe, right? So this is not something, it's stressful, and I'm kind of, if I get big enough, I will probably eventually have to start dealing with it myself, right? But it's basically, it's an attempt to, first of all, it's not just you, it's the people around you, so it affects the people around you. So so even if you're able to deal with it, the people around you might not be able to, and that affects you indirectly, right?
It's affecting my family, and they're not involved in this movement, any of them, in any way. And so, and I've always kept it from them as well, because I can tell them they're not interested. And now they're being affected by it. And I wish they weren't, frankly. I don't want anybody to have to deal with the consequences of my actions. Really, I would prefer to be the one that deals with the consequences of my actions. But unfortunately, because of my position, it means that I'm not just Vinny Eastwood. I've now become a symbol, a symbol of freedom, a symbol of hope, a symbol of resistance to the New World Order. So if I give up, that will destroy a lot of people's confidence in themselves You know, that's
Exactly.
that's what I found very difficult about this position, is because I just wanted to go out and do my thing and get my education. All right, a lot of people want to get their education through YouTube. You know, they'll watch a couple of videos about narcissism and they think they know something about it. But when you watch people who are much better than the ones that they're watching, and indeed not even watch them, but actually interview them, get to ask them questions and what have you, you gain a significantly grander perspective than the average person is really even willing to get, because they're too cowardly, generally speaking, to do so much as look at an expert on a topic who says uncomfortable things and send them an email asking to interview them, or asking to even so much as have a conversation. They don't want to do that. What they want to do is they want to stay safe. They want to consume content, absorb that content, think that they understand it, and then shoot that content out of everybody else, right? And they become very surprised why people don't listen to them, why people don't like them, why people begin to hate them and shun them. It's because, generally speaking, and this is probably the vast majority of the truth movement here, they don't have a clue what they're actually talking about, because they haven't actually done anything along the lines of what they're trying to inform you about, right? And that doesn't mean that I'm super educated and I know more than you and I'm a better person and so on and so on because I've done all this truth thing. Blah, blah. No, it has nothing to do with that. What the difference is, hands-on experience. Okay, you can go to university, you can learn all these things and what have you, and then come out and people tell you that you don't know jack, even though you just spent 10,000 hours getting your professorship. All right, that's how life is. If you don't have any real hands-on experience and work with other people, all the knowledge that you have is ostensibly, to a large degree, frickin' useless. And I've seen so many truthers like this. I mean, I remember when I was on a trip, and one guy told me that I must just be one of these woke leftist kind of neo-feminists. And I was just like, dude, you literally haven't listened to a word that I said. You're only used to sitting by yourself, reading a book, thinking about the book by yourself, not discussing it with anybody else, not having the ideas of it challenged in any way, and not practicing your capacity to have a conversation with anybody about anything meaningful. So that means that whenever a meaningful conversation does come your way, you have no idea how to deal with it, you have no idea how to communicate with people, you have no idea how to listen, and you don't know what you're talking about. Now, generally speaking, if you encounter these people on social media, you can just go block and the scum is gone. This person insults me, calls me a narcissist, calls me an idiot, calls me a dick, calls me an asshole, so on and so forth. Block and the scum is gone. But when that's happening
absolutely.
in real life, on the other hand, and you can't get away from these people, that's when your skills are really, truly tested.
Yeah, I do have a lot of respect for instance, my area. I mean, if you really wanted to throw in, I've chosen to specialize in, say, the manosphere, for instance, and specifically into MGTOW, but into the manosphere. Like I can break that. I'm super familiar with that area, and I'm also, to a somewhat bigger extent, because of my film and television background, I have a fairly good running knowledge of that area. But I mean, if you asked me, and I mean, it's why we don't, I mean, I've been criticized occasionally for not doing enough reporting on foreign events. And I'm just like, yeah, well, you know what, for the most part, right? I mean, I can kind of give a comment on it, but I mean, it's sort of like, you know, like for instance, when Bolsonaro won in Brazil, I mean, we covered that as a topic at one point, and it's like not something that I can get into super deep because I'm not super familiar with the politics of what goes on in Brazil, right? You know, we've covered stuff that's going on in New Zealand from time to time, but again, right, it's like I'm not there, I'm not boots on the ground, right? So all the information that I'm getting is stuff online. And here's the thing, it's a skill, right? Like, you not only have to look, but you have to know where to look. You got to understand that Google is not necessarily the best search engine. That YouTube is not necessarily going to provide you with the best information. So you got to have Rumble and ODYSEE and BitChute to get the proper to get the information that you need. And you have to go through, and it's like there are aggregation news sites that kind of do a good job. Unfortunately, it's like, so I mean, yeah, and as you go along, for instance, I mean the truth, the quote unquote truth movement or whatever, there's various factions inside of it, and not everybody that's in the truth movement is. This is the given fact with literally every faction in humanity. There are people inside it that are not necessarily mentally stable, or some of them are psychopaths, or whatever. And it's like you kind of have to roll. Like, I mean, I've had, like, for instance, I've had a couple of guys on my show over the years that I've had to, like, say, sorry, we can't have you back on anymore, because you're having too many conflict with the other people. I was like, man, you see my format. I tend to run kind of like an open seat type of thing, right? And yeah, so who to trust, who not to trust. It's sort of like you have to kind of interact with everybody, and then you pick up skills as you go along, right? Like, I'm constantly learning. Like, one of my most recent finds, and I just only rediscovered them about 3 months ago on YouTube, was this news channel called Redacted. And they actually do a very good they do a very good show, and they're able to cover international stuff much better than most of the major networks do. And then you discover stuff like this all the time, right? And you kind of you live and you learn, and you just go along.
Make a point here. I'm sorry, you can finish first, though.
I'm done. You can go ahead.
Who you were before you became a truther, for lack of a better word, is still who you are. Okay? You're still an uneducated, government-worshipping slave who doesn't take care of your own health or your mind or your spirit, or that kind of thing. And so it takes time to change who you are, but you always got to remember, and you do this when you go to truth gigs, you suddenly are like, you feel like you're with your tribe, and it's very positive, and you can sit down.
I'm looking forward to going to an Acapulco next year
and do it, because when you go to events like this, you feel like you found your family, like you've like your home kind of thing, and it feels so good and so nice and everything. But that's just what's happening initially, because you're around people who think like you. They don't think as you do. They think like you. We all think very, very differently. But because the truth is the truth, each of us in our own way, whether you're a Christian extremist or a Muslim extremist, you can come to the truth of the truth movement along different veins and different lines and things of that nature. But you can't discount the fact that all of our histories before we came into this have come with us. Okay? So if I am a mentally abused attention seeker with a big mouth, and I become a Truther Talk radio show host, and I'm talking about the truth, and I'm helping people out and making them laugh and stuff like that, that doesn't change the fact that I'm an attention seeker with a big mouth, does it? It just means that I'm utilizing it for something other than myself. Okay, because I've realized two things, and they're completely counterpoint to each other. Number one, I'm the most important person in the world, as far as I'm concerned. And number two, I'm not important in this world at all. All right? Those two ideas I hold simultaneously. And here's why. Number one, who can I force to do stuff? Me. Okay? Therefore, I'm the most important. Why? Because I'm the only one who can go out there and force myself to do stuff. Right? You don't need anybody else to boss them around and all of that kind of stuff. It's pointless. And number two, if I'm not doing anything, that means my life has no value. You understand? And a lot of people out there who aren't doing anything, and the reason why they're depressed is because their subconscious knows that they don't have any value to themselves or to society. And a lot of these people kill themselves or get themselves into severe drug addiction problems and things of that nature. They become a problem because they're ignoring the fact that they themselves, unless they work on themselves, unless they bring their ideas into fruition, unless they stop hurting people and lying and damaging and doing all of that kind of stuff, that they have no real value to the entirety of humanity. Now, so that's the first point explained. Now, the second point is understanding that you have no value, all right? It's because if I'm enslaved, or you're enslaved, or 20 million people are enslaved, or 10 billion people are enslaved, okay? That means that you're still a slave and I'm still a slave because any one of us are, okay? Now, if you can fight a global system by yourself, why aren't you doing it? Right? And the fact of the matter is nobody, not me, not you, not anybody can fight this system by themselves. Okay?
Oh, absolutely.
So, despite the fact that in terms of New Zealand, in terms of all the mainstream media and alternative media that have ever existed in this country, I have interviewed for longer and published more content than any other individual in my country that has ever existed. Now, does that mean that I'm better? No, it doesn't. It means I've just done the work to get in there. Does that mean that I'm smarter? No, it doesn't. I just did the work to get in there. All your work is just that. It's just work. You're just doing a job. Your job is to create something that doesn't yet exist. And almost all jobs are like that. Even an accountant, he's creating a spreadsheet that didn't previously exist. Or a carpenter creating a chair that didn't exist. Now, despite the fact that you as an individual can create these, if there ain't nobody there to listen to them, if there ain't nobody there to buy that chair or sit in that chair, what value do you really have with your work? Nothing. So, simultaneously, you are the most important person and you are valueless. And the only difference between that self-image and your collective image is how much work you are doing to justify your freaking existence.
Exactly.
People think that existence is just granted to them. Like, oh, here you go, bro. I'm giving you life. It's like, no. You've got so many obligations and things that you have to do. You don't have a choice. People don't realize this. They don't realize that they don't have a choice except to work for the truth, except to live by natural law and all of that kind of stuff. And even those of us who are aware of the choice, I still eat meat, for example, even though it goes against natural law. I'm freaking addicted to it.
Oh, I'm gonna be heading to a burger place as soon as we're done tonight. I got a hankering for Wendy's burgers. I don't think they've got Wendy's.
We do.
Down in.
We do have Wendy's. The Baconator.
I'm gonna be grabbing a couple of Baconators as soon as this interview's over.
Yeah, I got that Baconator and I ate her.
Well, here's a couple of things that came up. About the individual, and I'm probably not necessarily speaking to you, I'm maybe speaking to the audience, but this is something I heard on Coast to Coast AM years ago, about how the individual deals with the system. And this is something that I keep in mind. It's not me, and this applies to anybody who's listening. It's not you versus the machine versus the entire system. What it comes down to ultimately, and I haven't been doing this as long as you have, but I've been doing this for a few years myself now. It's no matter how many people are arrayed against you at any one time, right? Like ultimately, it's still when you're actually responding to that one person, it is still just one-on-one, ultimately, right? And I mean, the best example I ever heard of it, and again, this is something I used to watch on the History Channel about these fighter races. And there's this one Israeli fighter race, and he was up against, I think it was 7 Syrian jets, all at the same time, 7 of them. And his response was, "No, I wasn't worried." You want to know why I wasn't worried? Because no matter how many jets there are in the air, there's only room for one of them on your tail. That's the only one you really have to be worried about. And it's like, and you just deal with the one that's right in front of you. And then you just move on to the next one and to the next one, to the next one. Let them worry about coordinating themselves. And a lot of the times, I mean, what I've noticed with the opposition is they're as uncoordinated, and a lot of, oh my God, the ignorance. I'm sure you've run into like uninformed, the confident, ignorant ones are the ones that really get me.
Intelligent people question themselves a lot and are supremely unconfident. They're very careful with their speech and things of this nature. This is how you tell that they're intelligent. The ignorant, on the other hand, are very, very sure of themselves and know exactly what they know and that kind of thing. This is how you can tell that they're a complete frickin' idiot.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, like no matter how many people I'm at, not so much now, but when I first got started, because I originally, how I got started in this was right after the 2012 presidential election. What ended up happening, it was sort of like that was almost as if like Obama opened the gates to the SJWs and the far leftists, and they just came screaming into all of these areas in society. And for me specifically, there was a group called Atheism Plus, and they were basically social activism for atheists, and they claimed to be more educated, and they claimed to be more tolerant, and they claimed to be free thinkers, but they actually were in a way even worse than some of the worst Bible thumpers that I came across. And in dealing with them, this is 2012, 2013, I understood that it's sort of like, it doesn't matter how many of them come at me, right? I only have to deal with them one at a time, right? And that's been kind of my mentality. It's also because I'm in the 12-step program about me being the message and not getting up. I don't get up on soapboxes very much, right? So, and not being on a soapbox and just me being the message. If somebody's got questions, they can ask me, right? But I don't, in my day-to-day existence, I generally don't bring the stuff up unless I know the person or the conversation just drifts this way. What's really been getting me excited in the last few months, though, is that when I'm on the street, as opposed to, say, 5 or 6 years ago now, like when I start talking to random people on the street, I'm finding that there's more and more people out there that are definitely more aware of what's going on.
I was having a conversation with Keith AZ on Revolution Radio exactly along these lines the other day. And I was telling him about Jordan Maxwell and G. Edward Griffin and what they told me about when they started doing their research, how difficult it was to even do the research in the first place. Like, if I wanted to find out how the New World Order created the banking system in 1913, for example, I could find documentaries on BitChute and things of that nature without even leaving the house. And I could start informing myself within seconds after a search is conducted. Whereas back in the day, you had to go to a library. You had to use the Dewey Decimal System in order to find the books. And somehow you had to know what books you were looking for in the first place. And there's no reference for that whatsoever because there's no search terms that you could do at the time, keywords and so on and so forth. So to even get the information back in the day, you almost had to be raised in a household that would tell you these things from birth, more or less, in order to be able to have it be not incredibly
or be really
impossible.
Curious.
Yeah, I mean, that too. And curiosity will only take you so far, because regardless of how curious you are, you lack the knowledge at the moment, anyway, of how to make your search faster and how to find the good information first so that you don't have to wade through things, right? So since their day, and this is in the 1950s and 60s that they were doing their research, long before the internet, long before cell phones, nowadays, the ease in which we can get access to this information has grown as exponentially as the amount of people that are out there trying to share this information. The old guard, like G. Edward Griffin, who's still alive, and
Jordan Maxwell.
Sorry, forgot the name for a second. I was going to say Jerome Corsi, Corsi to a degree. They're dead now, and their knowledge has died with them to a large degree. And indeed, Jordan Maxwell's website and all his content got stolen from him, right? And so now when people go to jordanmaxwell.com, that's a fraudster who stole all his work and is collecting all the donations for themselves. So if you want to support Jordan Maxwell after he's dead, you have to go to jordanmaxwellshow.com. And goodness knows if that's even up at the moment. You see what's happening? Is that all of those people who were our elders, our mentors, who were smarter than us, who had to do more work than us to get access to the information that they've got, who've done more teaching in their lifetime than potentially we will ever do, those people are going to be gone someday, and they're never going to return. And the only thing that's going to be left is their content. And because that content's being censored and deleted and stolen and things of that nature, there's a possibility that we might end back exactly where we freaking started, right? Where information in the next 10 years becomes as hard as it was in the 1960s to find.
Exactly. I mean, for instance, with the Manosphere, Estar Vilar, Warren Farrell, couple of other individuals, their stuff was written back in the 70s. And Erin Pitsey is another one. She ran the first women's shelter in Britain back in the late 70s and 80s, and she noticed that the patterns of domestic abuse, surprise, surprise, it wasn't always the man's fault. In fact, a lot of times it wasn't the man's fault at all, but that's not how the media was portraying it, right? And she actually got ran out of Britain for speaking up about it. So yeah, I mean, every group has got those individuals in there that did the initial work, and it's sort of like, well, this is the great thing about this current system too, and this is also happening in Hollywood too, by the way, is that the gatekeeping that used to be there isn't nearly as effective anymore, because I mean, you can simply go around, like for instance, right, they could coordinate well enough that they could prevent certain information or make it difficult to find certain information in libraries. Well, you don't necessarily have, unless you are looking for like really specific documents, right? They could make it really difficult for you to find those documents. For say, music and film and television, right? There were various executives, usually only about 5 or 6 in each particular group, each particular field, that were the gatekeepers. You had to appease those individuals to get to where you needed to go in terms of like really making the money. Now, I mean, Sound of Freedom is a prime example of that, right? You don't necessarily have to go through the gatekeepers. Tom McDonald, I don't know if you've heard of him. He's doing pretty well, even though none of the major record labels, at least in North America, to my knowledge, will have anything to do with them. Or look what happened here with that Try It in a Small Town, right? Back 30 years or 25 years ago, if country music television didn't run your video, like that song wasn't going to go anywhere, right? and Jason Aldean's Try It in a Small Town, country music television took that song off the air, and it had the exact opposite effect. So the gatekeepers that used to be there in terms of the information are not there anymore. Conversely, though, you also have, if you're not careful, you can absolutely get swamped with too much information. And some of it can be contradictory. And if you don't know specifically what you're looking for, it can create confusion, frustration. I mean, I know I've stepped in it a couple times because I got information which changed
You know how
at a later date.
Mark Passio has done these presentations called "Fake Ass Christians" and stuff like that, right? And I was thinking he really does need to make a new presentation called "Ignorant Ass Truthers." There's so many of us out there who are just dumb, mentally ill, and
I'm not going to mention his name, but you know who he is. His initials are KD. I think you know the person I'm talking about.
I don't.
I don't really want to mention Kyler Davenport.
Yeah, I never heard of them.
Okay, yeah, no, you have to talk to Jaffe about him. And V. Yeah, he would fall into that category.
Yeah, and these people are dangerous because they make the rest of us look bad. Right? Anybody wants to say that conspiracy theorists are crazy, there's infinite evidence for them to prove it.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? And I'm sick of these people. And, you know, frankly, they don't deserve to have our time or our consciousness and stuff like that. So, generally speaking, I don't mention their name or make a problem with them unless they have deliberately come after me for a long time without relenting. Like, that's my benchmark. I won't really say anything about you or do anything to stop you unless you become my problem for a long time and ignoring you doesn't make you go away.
Yeah, well, you have to be selective, right? It's like, if you're not careful, you can get, and this has happened to me occasionally, not often, but it's happening more frequently, where you just get bogged down with this one particular individual, and this individual will just hang in there and be persistent. And no matter what you tell a person, they will just not shut up, right? Yeah, I've run into that. It's like, I mean, Jeremy Hembling used to say at one point, he was proud of the fact that he had never used the block feature on YouTube on anybody, and then all of a sudden it's like he had to start going, yeah, I had to start using the block feature. Like, there's just people that just will not stop. Yeah. And they will engage, they will dox you, they will threaten you. I mean, I'm sure, like, I mean, the first time I actually got a death threat, like that, really, and here's the thing, I got that death threat while I was back home with my parents because my mom was on the verge. She was going to be dead. She was going to be dead in about 6 weeks, right? So we were basically dealing with her estate issues while I was there, right? And I got the death threat while that was going on. This was like 2021. Yeah, it took quite a while before I got my first death threat. But I mean, it was sort of like, I had to call somebody that wasn't in the household to let them know what was going on, because I don't think my mom in particular would have been very happy to find out in her condition that her son had received a death threat over his internet activities. But that's the first time. That's the first time. The death threats the first couple of them anyway, kind of threw me, and then I kind of realized that it's sort of like, well, you know what, just like somebody who would be that desperate or that insane to actually resort to using that is probably not somebody that no, most of the time is probably not going to have the mental or emotional financial resources to actually do anything to you, especially unless they actually happen to live right in the city that you live in. So, I mean, I've had somebody attempt to blackmail. I mean, this is stuff I'm sure you've run into: blackmail, extortion, death threats, threats of physical harm. Actually, there's a guy from New Zealand who actually threatened. He like literally, this is like 2017. He actually threatened to get up on a plane and fly up to where I was living to quote unquote fight me. This is a guy in New Zealand. So yeah,
dumbass.
That's
and
yeah.
That's the thing. I believe I was interviewing Stefan Versteppen, martial arts master, that kind of thing. And these guys come up to him at a bar one time and were trying to start a fight with him. Yeah, come on, man, And he just sits at the bar and he looks around him and he can see that there's bottles he can use as weapons, ashtrays he can use as weapons, chairs he can use as weapons, so on and so forth. And he just looks back at these people and very calmly goes, come on then, hit me. Because he knows, as a martial arts master, that when people are threatening that kind of thing, it's usually because they're weak and they don't know how to fight very well. That's why they get all big and blustery and threatening and stuff like that. Okay? Because they're idiots. They don't realize what they are, what they lack, and generally speaking, a lot of the time, they don't know who they're dealing with. Right? And so that kind of comment there was somebody saying, I'm going to jump on a plane and come all the way over there to have a fight with you. That just reeks to me of what Psychology Today said about internet trolls. They are psychopaths, narcissists, and sadists. Overwhelmingly. If somebody's trolling you on the internet, threatening you or whatever, this is ostensibly their mental profile. I am a worthless piece of crap, but I'm so ignorant that I don't want to acknowledge that, and I'm so cowardly that even if I did acknowledge it, I wouldn't want to work on it, and I'm so incompetent that even if I did try and work on it, I wouldn't get any progress. All right? These people. So,
I've had
what do they do instead? What they do is they try to get reactions out of people. Okay, now it doesn't matter how you react. If you react negatively to them or you react positively to them, you are still giving them the energy that they want. And the sadists in particular really love it when you get worked up, really love it when you get upset, because that gives them so much good feelings, because it tells them
Piker, yeah.
It tells them that they're better than you, that they made this happen, and they're so important because you took the time to react to them and that kind of thing. So after I read that Psychology Today article, I was like, okay, what do I do with anybody who starts trolling me now? Delete them. All right, and they're gone. Block and the scum is gone. My block list on Facebook alone takes 28 minutes to scroll through reading the names. All right? That is a long freaking block. Thousands of people. You can just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling for a long freaking time. That's how many ignorant ass truthers have tried to shine me on social media where it's safe for them. Any idea how many people have given me crap in person in the truth movement?
Well, with your face out there, I'm having to imagine you run into it at least on I won't say a daily basis, but enough times during the day. Not much.
Freaking once. Not once has
really?
Anybody who considers themselves a truther ever had the balls to come up and say to me something in person. Now, that may possibly be because when I'm sitting here on this radio show, I don't look that big. But when you see me in person and you realize that I'm 6'6", they might kind of think to themselves, I'm going to go up and say something to that Vinny, and then they see how big I am and I go, oh, he actually looks pretty tough. And they're cowards. All right?
Yeah, well, I'm 6'2", so yeah, it doesn't happen. I don't show my face, but yeah, I know how to handle myself in a fight, right? It's, and I'm not saying that to brag or anything like that, but it's sort of like, yeah. but yeah, I mean, not anybody who's listening to the stuff that Vinny and I are talking about. Then this is not to scare any of you away from making your own content or starting up with this.
I'll speak for yourself there,
Despite
Neroke.
all,
I'm trying to discourage everybody. Like,
what I mean, I now that I've gotten into this and I've been doing this for a few years, I really cannot imagine stopping for any reason, right? Unless somebody puts a bullet in my head or something, like I get so badly injured in an accident that, I mean, I can't use the internet without using a breathing tube to hit the keys, right? Um, this is I mean, this is what I signed up for. And yeah, like I say, I mean, if you listen to at the start of every show, I'm going to be doing this till I die or find something else to do, or find something better to do. Haven't found anything better to do. In fact, as I'm getting more into this, it's that I make really interesting friends and contacts. And like I say, I'm actually, yeah, like I've got Anarchapulco on my cal. If I've got the cash to go to it next year, I definitely plan on going, because it's sort of like, yeah, I need to hook in with some people. I mean, I've hooked in with some people locally. There's a group that I've kind of like hooked up with here, because they're trying to turn the city. I live in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, by the way, just so that everybody knows. For whatever reason, the globalists have decided that they're going to try to like Edmonton is going to be their kickstart point in North America to model the 15-minute cities. And there's a group called YEG United that has organized against it. Yeah, and they're dealing with all of the issues that you and I are talking about, and they're college kids for the most part, right? And I mean, I've been trying to help them out and whatever. And I mean, it's, I wish them the best of luck, but it's sort of like, yeah, these organizations, these groups are springing up everywhere as people become more aware of what's going on, right? I'm kind of looking forward to seeing the documentary then, and maybe I might be able to fix them up to do an interview with you at some point as well. Floor's yours.
okay. Well, I mean, it's good when you're getting connections with other people, because I think 95% of people, that's 19 out of every 20 people you meet, are not worth your frickin' time. All right, I mean, just lay it out fact. There's only a small percentage of people who can even have the brain power and the will to even be capable of understanding these things that we already know. And that means that you don't have to worry about getting a huge following or doing any of that. I had 20 people watching my stream, and I appreciate each and every one of them, because I know that it's very, very unlikely that anybody will bother to watch a Vinny Eastwood show live stream unless they're reasonably intelligent, have a good sense of humor, a wide knowledge base, and aren't a mentally ill sociopathic scumbag. All right? Those are the 4 things that really define each member of my audience, and I hope I've summed it up really well. So if you're listening to this right now, that's you, quite likely. And thank you, because the amount of influences that are out there to try and make you otherwise are so significant that even you having the capacity to resist turning into a dick is goddamn special. And thank you. Like, seriously, you know what I'm talking about, don't you, bro?
Yep. I actually did a whole series, Your Own Personal Revolution, where I broke everything that we've had with a lot of the stuff we've been discussing tonight. I've broken it down into probably 30 small videos which explain each facet, and a lot of it is just what I've noticed is that when I broke it down into very easily digestible steps like that. Your own personal revolution. It's an Odyssey, BitChute, and Rumble. It's not on YouTube, obviously. But if you look under Neroke 5, you'll find it. Most of it is about just making sure your own head space, your emotional space, and your mental space is clear, and just being aware of where you are in relation to your environment. Most of it is not even really action oriented or externally driven in terms of dealing with other people. Most of it is just simply like making sure that my own head in my own space is grounded, squared away, and that I'm not getting, like, I mean, for instance, and that's the reason why they keep throwing what's the reason why they throw all of this stress at you, for instance, right? It's an attempt to keep you decentered, right? It's an attempt to keep you off balance, right? Because if you're in a stressed state, you might make a bad decision that they can take advantage of, and it starts that whole negative feedback loop, right? So when I did your own personal revolution, a lot of it I've noticed when I broke it down into small bite-sized pieces, a lot of it is just simply like watching your own personal, looking after your own personal headspace and your own personal space immediately around you. And I mean, I'm having to imagine that's something that you pay a lot of attention to, given what your current situation is. But I mean, that's the type of personal content that I like making. The Red Pill Nation is part of what I do, but it's not the only thing I do.
Yeah.
And I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Well, it's just it's a job, and just like the Cypress Hill song Rock Superstar says, it's a fun job, but it's still a job, right? And a lot of people, they have these fantasies about who we are in real life. And who we are in real life is not necessarily who we are on the radio, because who we are on the radio, there's a certain format, there's a certain tone that we're going for, and that kind of thing. And in real life, you'll see that same tone, you'll see that same sort of personality that we have on the radio, but there's other things as well. Some things that you may not like, that you don't see on the radio. So when you're a big fan of somebody like me, and then you meet me in person, and you see how I live my life and what have you, it'll be disjointed from the image that you've got in your head. Because the old saying goes, never meet your heroes. You ever heard that saying?
Oh, I've heard it more times than I've actually had the misfortune of meeting one of my heroes. Feet of clay. Yeah.
Yeah.
The biblical statement, feet of clay. Go ahead.
So the same thing goes for me and everybody else. Don't put us on a pedestal. Don't make something of us that we're not. Give us our due credit for what we actually do. Don't project onto us your hopes, your dreams, and your desires, and so on and so forth, because that's you. That's your subconscious. You're the one who actually wants to be the hero. You don't want us to be your hero, okay? You want to be your own. That's what your subconscious...
Be the hero in your own life. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's what our subconscious tells us on a consistent basis, more or less. Every time we see somebody who we think is better than us in some way, we feel bad about ourselves in some way, unless we start working to get towards that goal of being like that person in some way, or doing one thing that person can do, etc. Right? And also, it's not a fair fight either. You're born into this. You've got however many brains you've got. You've got however much physical attributes you've got, however handsome or pretty you are, and that's you, okay? So nobody can be somebody else, more or less, okay? Not not perfectly anyway. You can do imitations, you can do impressions, you can go out and try to be like Alex Jones, or go out and try to be like Max Egan or Vinny Eastwood or whichever person that you follow on the radio. But you will fall short because we have component parts to us that have taken us where we are that you do not possess. So that means whatever you turn into, if you work really hard and if you're true to yourself, you will come out sounding, looking, and being very different from us. And that's not a bad thing. That is a good thing.
And besides, this show turning the frogs gay.
They're making the shrimp commit suicide! And the only way to stop this is to buy my bone broth for $9.95 on Infowars.com/shop. And the super caveman supplement for those testicles that you need so badly.
You know, I don't know how he gets away with wearing a white lab coat when he's selling his supplements and stuff like that.
Dr. Jones here.
I don't know. I never really got into Alex. It's kind of weird because it's sort of like there's stuff that he has been so right on and stuff that he has just been like completely off about, right? And it's like, it's just, I mean, he says it confident, but I mean, again, right? He started earlier than both you and I did, and I mean, at one time he was just a guy in Austin driving around in his car with a bullhorn, right, and doing a small radio show that was just basically just the Austin, Texas area. That's how he got started, right? And of course, it helped because I mean, coast to coast. Not Art Bell never had Alex Jones on, but George Norrie had Alex Jones on quite frequently, and that's kind of where he really started to take off. Now we're pushing. Oh God, we've been doing this for about an hour 35. Very interesting conversation. On
that point, I'd just like to name drop at the moment. I had George Norrie on my show back in the day, man. Just the once, but I was just like, yeah. Right. It was so good, man. I love getting big guests on the show, or at least I did back in the day. I used to skip around the house all excited because I was still in that fanboy stage. I'm not there anymore, but if I do get big guests, I am still, happy after the show because, I don't know, I think it was with John Perkins, the economic hitman, the guy who's sent down to South America to bribe South American
that guy
dictators.
Is fascinating.
Had him on my show, and towards the end of the broadcast, he says, Vinny, there's a lot of people who do what you're doing, but you're the best. And I was just like, whoa, and it's funny because it's happened actually quite a lot with big guests who've been interviewed thousands of times, appeared in 100 documentaries and stuff like that. They come to the end of an interview with me and they're like, that's the best show I ever did, right? And that's because it's not an interview where you just relaying.
Well, we're having a conversation. I mean, I've asked you some questions. Yeah.
Right now,
that's kind of like how I like to do things.
All right. Now, verse, like the verse in a song to sing. Con, like chili con carne, which is chili with meat. All right. Together. We sing together. Right. That is basically what we do on the Vinny Eastwood show, whoever it is. Now, the vast majority of the time, I don't know who my guest is. Like my listeners suggest them. I send them an email, get them on the show. That's all I know about them. Now, some people would call me lazy. And some people would call me foolish or unprepared. But when that person comes away almost very consistently, no matter who it is, saying that this is the best show that they've ever done, there's something to that. Okay, something beyond laziness, something beyond what you might think about that lack of preparation. Because what you might not be aware of is that the more people you interview, the better you get at it. And the more talk radio you do, the better you get at two things, listening and talking. Because that's the gig, more or less.
That's what Joe Rogan does, right? He doesn't, he just lets the person talk.
Mm-hmm. Now,
for the most part. I mean, he's got a skepticism, and occasionally one of the guests will do something that annoys him. But I mean, Art Bell was also really good at that, right? He wouldn't really ask questions. He would just kind of like, he would just kind of like let the person talk and would only interject at a couple of points. That's kind of like the style that I like to go to. Yeah, go ahead.
You've got somebody on your show. Let's say you never had him on your show before. And what you want to do is you want to make sure of two things. As far as I'm concerned, this is what American Freedom Radio and my experience taught me. American Freedom Radio, Danny Romero, who basically gave most of the truth movement at that time in the late 2008 kind of area, he gave so many people who you would see as frequent regulars on the Alex Jones show and Rants and all of these other big truth radio shows. A lot of those big guests actually wound up becoming hosts themselves, in part because of Danny Romero. Now, what he told me is the one rule of talk radio as far as he was concerned. 2 words: have fun. Okay, why is that important to have fun while you're talking about, say, satanic ritual abuse? Well, I'll tell you why. Because if you're having fun, the audience will be having fun. All right? You and your audience have a very intimate relationship like that, your words to their ears. And if you are not having fun, if you are not in a good mood, they'll be able to pick up on that subconsciously, and your show won't be successful. It won't be something that people really want to listen to. Now, the other rule, from my experience, that I added on to American Freedom Radio's one rule, is be yourself. Because if you're just being yourself, you will be relaxed.
Yeah, no pretensions.
And that will relax the audience. So I want my audience and my guests at the end of every show, they could go to bed afterwards. Okay? They're that relaxed. And indeed, V, who's a guest on this show a number of times, told me that. Not only did I inspire him to start his own show, but also he used to listen to me back in the day before he went to bed. Because as a targeted individual, you have so much stress and so much worry all the time that it can be very, very difficult to sleep. And you had a choice, either cat videos or the Vinny Eastwood show. All right? Nothing else was able to calm him down and get him out of that stress state for enough to be able to get to sleep at night. So, you're welcome, V. And you're welcome anybody else who listens to the Vinny Eastwood show as a nightlight.
Okay, well, yeah, like I said, we still got about 18 minutes before we hit 2 hours.
We don't have to hit 2 hours, man. If you're tired, we can just wrap it up.
Oh no. I mean, we could definitely pick the. I mean, like I said, I'm going to be actually specifically doing your show probably at some point in the next month or two anyway.
Speaking of which, if I go to jail, would you mind hosting an episode of my show on RBN while I'm away?
I could. I have never done anything like that before, but I could give it a shot, yeah.
All right, excellent. That's one host down. I need 18. Give or take.
Well, I mean, I could ask GIMP-Suit Steve that he's interested in hosting his own show. I don't think he gets a little. Well, actually, I mean, he doesn't actually own a GIMP suit or anything like that. But I mean, you've been on a couple of our shows. Yeah, we take ourselves quite seriously there, as you've pretty much determined. Steve. Rearson might be up for it. Yeah, I can ask around. Yeah, that would definitely be an interesting challenge to do. So, I mean, I haven't done. Rearson's done my show a couple of times back when I had COVID. That would be an interest. That would be. I don't know who the guest would be, but yeah, I'd be up for that.
Cool, bro. All right. Well, that's one down, and I've got a list of trusted colleagues in the truth movement that I'm going to run down and see if I can get them all to contribute to Vinny Eastwood's prison sentence show. And in all
don't
likelihood,
forget your harmonica.
And in all likelihood, what we'll be doing is doing a template show whereby we'll pre-record them and then we'll send them to the network and they'll just have them there just in case kind of thing. So nobody has to do it live if they don't want to and all of that kind of thing. But I don't know. It's really weird trying to replace yourself. Have you ever noticed that? You notice that you're actually irreplaceable?
Well, I mean, on your own show, yeah. Well, I mean, you have your own particular style, right? Coast to Coast AM was never really Coast to Coast AM once Art Bell stepped away from it. I mean, of the actual, like, he had Ian Pun and he had a couple of other people that came on. Of the three people that he would have on a regular basis, George Norrie was actually my least favorite of the three, and he was the one who ended up inheriting the mantle. And yeah, I just never got into George Norrie as much as I got into Art Bell. But Art Bell been doing this for decades, though, and so he had it down pretty well. Like I say, it's a skill. Yeah, it's I think I pretty much talked out. The only thing I wanted, I thank you to your audience for listening to me. I do hope that nobody. Well, actually, it doesn't really matter whether you think I'm insane or not, because I don't suffer from insanity. I actually enjoy every minute of it. Just so you know, and the decision to do what you and I are doing comes with certain sacrifices. And honestly, now that I've gotten fully into it, I really can't picture myself. It is a job, obviously, but I mean, I can't imagine myself doing anything else at the moment, except possibly maybe shooting live content, which I may get back to at some point. And I will give you the final word. And then, like I say, we'll pick this up in another few weeks when I'm actually doing your show and we're discussing the manosphere and Hollywood and possibly recovery. But tonight it's about you, so I will let you have the last word.
Okie dokie. Well, I mean, the most important thing that I need people to do right now is go to the VinnyEastwoodShow.com, the VinnyEastwoodShow.com, Vinny with a Y, because it's the most important question, and Eastwood, like, go ahead, make my news. In addition to going to search bar and looking up your favorite hosts and your favorite guests and things like that, because I've done thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of shows, ladies and gentlemen, and there is a good chance that whomever you have listened to over the years who you've really enjoyed, the chances are very good that if they've done a Vinny Eastwood interview, they will have very much enjoyed it, and so will you. So go on there and search for Mark Passio or James Corbett or David Icke or Max Egan, or, there's hundreds and thousands of people that I've interviewed. So they're all very, very good, and a lot of them are there archived. Some of them are not archived, and they're just audio only. But really, at the end of the day, there's just a massive amount of content that's on the VinnyEastwoodShow.com that's, while it's still there, goodness knows at some point they may get my ISP to remove the VinnyEastwoodShow.com from the internet or something. I don't know. So in the meantime, try and use what is there to educate yourself, to entertain yourself, and to help you sleep at night if that's what you do. I've also got the latest page as well with all the new shows that we've got going up there, and a lot of the recent stuff is actually very, very good, particularly the show that we did with Billy TK, and another one up the top there that we did with what was his name, Dr. Guy Hatchard, and on the Dr. Rima Truth Report. So it was a very, very good show. And I found that the more time you get roundtable discussions, like groups of intelligent people talking, man, those are good shows. Because they're way better than just two people talking for some reason. I don't know what it is. It's quantity over quality.
No, that's what I like doing, right? As you well know.
Aye. And also, I had a band. I mean, you don't really have a band anymore. So if anybody is listening to this and they're from New Zealand and they know how to play the drums or guitar or bass or anything really, and you want to either A, have a jam, or B, become a part of my band and whatnot, please contact me through the VinnyEastwoodShow.com's contact page. But in the meantime, you can support my musical efforts by becoming a Patreon of Vinny and the Vendettas and giving us a few dollars a month. And you can check out our work there on Facebook, YouTube, and SoundCloud. Done whole bunches of songs. I think they're very good. And almost everybody who has listened to them, apart from my ex-wife, thinks they're very good. And of course, looking for donations as well to help me pay off my $6,000 legal bills, which is actually more debt than I've ever been in my life by a factor of 100%. The most bills I've ever had in my life that I haven't had paid off was $3,000, and now I'm in $6,000 worth of debt just from lawyers' bills, and that's just freaking killer, man. Paying it off at 100 New Zealand dollars a week, and that is so hard to keep up. So if anybody's interested in helping me out donation wise, you can either send a big donation and I'll get a huge chunk of it paid off there. Or if you want to send a small donation regularly, whether it be weekly or monthly, whether it be $100 a month or $5 a week, it doesn't matter. Every little thing makes a huge difference. And let me explain to you this why. Why does small donations make a huge difference? Because often they're through PayPal, and PayPal charges you money to withdraw your funds unless you've got over $150 in there. All right. So I can't tell you how many times throughout the years I've been sitting there on $148 or $147 or something like that, and I'm just waiting, and sometimes have to wait several days or a week for another donation to come in so we can actually get that money out of there. So that's one way. But also, at the same time, those New Zealanders who support me through the KiwiBank, all the costs of running the show, the equipment that we have, the rent, the power, the water, internet, and all of those bills, food, all of that stuff is paid basically 100% via the donations of the listening audience. And it's been working since 2008. All right, since 2008, I've been supported very graciously by the wonderful listeners in the audience. And I'm extremely, extremely grateful for that because it means that I can continue to do the only thing I'm actually able to do. All right? I got complex post-traumatic stress from being arrested by police, so I can't work for any government agency, and being screwed over by my employer, which means I can't work for any private employment. What can you do when you can't work in the public or private sector? You see?
Self-employed, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And because I can't do taxes and all of that other kind of stuff, the great thing about this is everything is marked as gift, because that's exactly what it is. You're not purchasing anything. You're not getting anything back for it necessarily, although there are a list of donor rewards, which I really wish my donors would contact me just to have a chat, just to say hi at the very least. And I'm offering to give them help if they've got a media project or idea that they want to get off the ground. I'm very good at helping people with their ideas. And if they want to send me a guest request, just say, Vinny, I'm a donor. Can you please interview Mark Passio or something like that? That's what I'm here for, baby. And so those things are really good in New Zealand because our legal system, and I believe that it's similar in the rest of the world, they can't tax gifts. All right. You ever been sent a $5 by your grandmother on your birthday, and it had a little insert in there from the government saying we taxed a couple of bucks out of this? No? Okay, that's because it can't happen. It's actually illegal to tax gifts. And in New Zealand, you can earn up to $1 million a year in gifts and not have to pay a single dollar of tax on it. This is how I've been managing to survive. I'm just doing this for survival, both for myself and humanity, of course, without having to support the tyrannical state and their theft of all of our resources. And the only reason I can do that is because of all the people who support me. And I'm freaking so grateful for that, man. And I'm also feel very guilty about it as well, because no matter how much people give me, I know that I could never pay it back. So the only thing I can do is pay it forward to keep doing the work, keep helping people, keep giving people information, inspiration, a bit of love, that kind of thing. I think it's worth it. And if I'm wrong, that means that all the things that I've suffered have been for nothing, right? And I don't think I'm wrong, because I think that there are still good people in this world that are worth fighting for. Like my mate Billy TK, for example, we've got a change.org petition, Justice for Billy TK and Vinny Eastwood. I really love people to go to change.org and just search Billy TK or Vinny Eastwood and go and sign and share that petition. We are 165 signatures off of 13,000, and we'd love to get that to 15,000 if possible. But there's no guarantees there. Billy's also working on a documentary, the River of Lies, the New Zealand Scamdemic and investigative documentary.
Oh, I did want to ask you about that Christchurch shooter. It just completely skipped my mind, but we're pretty much out of time at this point.
Oh, the Christchurch thing. Let me see.
There's a lot of stuff about that. Maybe when I come on again.
I'm just going to look. It's not on this computer. I don't have the file on this computer. However, on Facebook, I think, if we search for Christchurch Mosque Massacre in 5 minutes. No, can't find it. That's unfortunate.
Okay, well, I was going to ask you about that, but yeah, we're getting close to 2 hours, and I got to do a little bit of a plug for myself. Thank you very much, Vinny, for taking time out of what happens to be a fairly busy schedule for you to come on to my humble little corner of the internet and do this for me. For those of you who don't know, I am at Patreon as Neroke5. I am Subscribestar as Neroke5. BitChute, ODYSEE, Rumble, MGTOW TV, all versions of Neroke5. They're all spelled differently because if somebody tries to dox me or whatever, I will know where it is. I am also at Facebook, Gab, Minds, MeWe, Getter, also a site called communities.win. I'm no longer on, but I am no longer at Reddit and YouTube. I got booted off. I got sick and tired of YouTube, and I just got booted off of Reddit, and I don't really feel like going back. So, if anybody who's listening wants to help me out, I would really appreciate it. Like I say, I'm going to be doing this until I die or find something better to do. Thank you, Vinny Eastwood, for coming on. If you feel like showing up for Wednesday, there's always a chair open for you. And this was really interesting. We didn't really talk a whole lot about like truther stuff. It was mostly about personal experiences and how we deal with them. And that's as relevant as any of the actual subjects that we discussed tonight. So thank you very much for showing up, and hopefully we'll be able to do this again in another few weeks. So thank you very much.
All right, cheers, brother. And last thing I wanted to say, I wanted to get people to go to my website and click on the Day Democracy Died banner, the big blue banner on there, the Day Democracy Died, and watch the little documentary that I made about my arrest. And hopefully you can share that out so people know about our plight. Thank you so much for your time, brother. We'll see you again.
Thank you very much.